But the basic thing that you've already heard is that we're producing maps, but we're not talking about producing a paper map. We're talking about producing data that can be used in a GPS. You can use it for navigation. It's download. They do all sorts of weird and wonderful things with it, and it can be used in a number of different ways. So you're not just producing something that's a piece of paper. I'll keep flicking through. He says, hopefully. Right, now the thing about the OpenStreetMap data is that there is no copyright on it whatsoever. So it's produced. What you are producing, British Red Cross don't have to say, please can I use it? It's there, they use it. If somebody else comes along and says, can I use it? They use it. They just download it and they use it. So it's absolutely wonderful for those purposes. Okay, we're getting there. Right, this was, we're talking about Haiti in the space of a couple of days. Just to give you a bit of a background on why we use a thing called the Tasking Manager, I tried to join in the mapping of that area. And the basic problem we got at that stage is that a thing called the Tasking Manager was in its infancy. And what we found was that I was trying to map a little bit, and if Dan was trying to map the same bit as me, the software was telling us that there was a conflict. So now somebody has come up with this thing that divides all of the areas up into squares so that Dan maps his bit and I map my bit. Right, okay. What we're going to do is we're going to actually get you mapping as we go along. Has everybody got an OpenStreetMap account? Anybody not got one? Right, okay. Dan, could you? Yep. Yep. Okay, are you all logged into your OpenStreetMap account? If you're not, log in quick. Okay, there is a walkthrough on ID. Do we have any JOSM users in the room? One or two? Yeah? Okay. Derek, I've lost him. I've lost Derek. Derek is our JOSM expert who walked in the door and seems to have run away. We'll get in with you at the back there if there's anything that you wanted to sort out on JOSM. Right, okay. Now, what I'd like you to end up with, if you're not there already, is I'd like you to end up with OpenStreetMap on one tab, and another tab, I want you to go to the Tasking Manager, and if you search for OpenStreetMap Task Manager, if you haven't got it already, on your other tab, so OpenStreetMap Task Manager, you should get that, and you use exactly the same login as you used for the OpenStreetMap account. I'm looking round, looking to see if anyone's frowning or anything. Everyone okay with that? Okay, the Tasking Manager, at the moment, as you first look at it, once you've logged in, all of the tasks are listed according to priority. The very first task that I saw earlier today was marked as urgent, and that, I think, is to do with Palestine, isn't it? Unless it's altered. Anyone got a list? I can have a quick look over their shoulder. Right, well, this evening we're mainly going to be looking at Ebola. So we've got Ebola and we've also got the Congo. So if you can get onto your screen, are we happy going with 624? 624? I'm hoping that the other people that also got involved in this are happy with 624. Okay. If you can go down to task 624. Anyone got any problems?
606.
Okay, 606 Central African Republic. I'm happy with. Yeah, okay, I'm happy. We don't. Can I just say to you, people are dying out in these places. If you do 624, I've got no problem with it. If you do 606, I've got no problem with it. They're both high priority. There are people who need mapping. The principles are exactly the same. So if you want to divide between the two of you, as long as you end up on one or the other. Okay, now there will be instructions to do with the task, whichever one you've got. For one of them, it talks about you've got to map the buildings, and on the other one, it's just mapping the road network. But there are also a number of little tabs, and you've got contribute, activity, and stats. I'd like you all just to click on stats for a moment for me, please. Now you've got a nice little graph showing how much work has been done on this. If you scroll down underneath that, you'll find a list of names, and that list of names is all of the people that have done any mapping on that task. Now when you've mapped a square and you've completed it, your username will appear in that list. Now if you move your mouse over one of those names, you don't have to click on it, just move your mouse over the top of it. You will see over to the right that the squares in that map actually change, and the ones that are highlighted now are the ones that that user has done. So when you are looking into what you've done, if you go to a task that you've mapped on, find your username, mouse over the top, you can then, now if you find any of those squares that are over to the right, you can roll the mouse and zoom into the box. If you click on any one of those squares which is either yellow or green, you will see the comments that have been put in there by the person that's mapped it. Everyone got some comments to look at? Some of them tend to be a little bit brief. Okay, now to come out of that square, there is an X, sort of about a third of the way across the screen, left-hand side. That's it. Click on that, and that will take you back out of that square, and you're back into the list. Now, if you go back across to the Instructions tab, what I'd like you to get used to is the fact that we're trying to map quickly, but really what we want is accuracy on this as well. And if a task says, I want the buildings, it's because somebody might actually need to know where the buildings are. So you need to look at the instructions, have a read through, make sure you understand it. You'll find on some of them there are comments on things like leisure equals common, I think it is the tags. And that's basically where you've got a village and you have an area outside which could be used as a helicopter landing pad. So they're saying if you find something and it looks as though it's suitable for that, not somebody's crop, thank you very much, but you know, something that's in use, then it could be used as a helicopter landing pad. Then you're going to outline it and you're going to tag it as a leisure equals common, and it can be used in that way. Most of the time the mapping that you're going to be doing is going to be very, very simple. It's roads and buildings, but there are a couple of extra things, and you need to just make sure you read through the instructions so you know what's required for your tab. And I think I've waffled long enough. Has everybody finished reading on that? We doing okay over there, Dan? Okay, everyone okay? Right. If you now click on the Contribute button, now I strongly suspect that the best way of doing this is for it to allocate a random square, because with 50 or 60 people in this room, if I all tell you to try and choose one in particular, I know what's going to happen. 49 of you are going to choose the same square. So if you click on the select, and it's a random selection, and we'll see what it does. Right, okay. So the tasking manager has chosen a square for you, and you've now got a little timer that's on that screen as well. I think, no, not yet, there's got another button to go yet. It's chosen a square. There might be nothing in that square. On the other hand, there might be a lot in that square. And we're not going to know until we go on the next stage. So has everybody managed to get to the stage where they've clicked on the thing and they've got a square? Right. You've now got a big green button, and if you click on the big green button, you've got to. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, okay. Now, for me, this is a bit like a juggling act because I could have all sorts of different squares that are in front of you. So, right. You should be in the region of something like what I've put on the screen at the moment. You can choose which editing tool you're going to use. And we're going to go with ID. So if you click on the little triangle and then edit with, and it's ID editor.
And if anyone else is super stuck, prepare just put up your hand and we'll
Now, as I said earlier, if you are using Internet Explorer, you might need a little bit of help at this stage. We don't know why, but it caused us a few problems before. Sorry?
People don't know this is in a separate tab.
Right, now, all of your web browsers, if you look at the top of your screen on your web browser, you've got different tabs. You've probably still got the tasking manager as one of the tabs, and you've got ID in the other tab. So you can flick backwards and forwards between the two just by clicking on the tab. Sorry, if I'm teaching you to suck eggs, I'm sorry, but at some point somebody will ask a question. Okay. If you are asked about doing a walkthrough with ID, by all means do it, because it is a very good walkthrough and it's going to be an awful lot better than what I'm going to do sort of talking to you at the moment. So if you have reached a stage where you've done the walkthrough or you know roughly what you're doing, what I will get you to do is just have a look at your screen. You've got a big square which is showing you the boundary of the area that you are allowed to map. Now, if you remember, I said earlier that we had problems back in the times of Haiti because we had conflicts where we were all trying to do the same thing. You must stay within your square. So when you zoom in, make sure you zoom in, roll the mouse, or if you're an expert with a touchpad, go for that. But make sure that whatever you do throughout the whole of the evening is within your square. Do not go elsewhere. Now, you can zoom in. For me on a Linux system, if I just use the arrow keys on my keyboard, if I press the left-hand arrow, it will move across to the left. If I move the up arrow, it goes up, up. If you want to do that, you can do that. Now, over to your right-hand side of the screen, you've got a number of icons. And what I'd like us to get to is the one which has got the layers on it. It looks like a pile of sheets of paper. Click on the layer button. Now at the top of the screen you've got, to my mind it's a little bit backwards, but at the top of the screen you've got the options on the brightness for the background layer. So if you just try clicking on those, you'll see the different things there. On my screen, invariably it comes up very dark and I have to get it as light as possible. So have a little play and get it so you can actually see it, okay? Well, if you can get that working, that would be great. Now, you've got a number of choices for your layers. Both of the tasks that I've spoken about are using Bing. Now, the reason that we've chosen that purely for tonight is that with the number of people who could be mapping all at once, something like Bing is very, very good because it's quite resilient. If we'd chosen some of the other tasks, they're very needy and at other times do them, but I'm not sure that 50 people all hitting a small website for the satellite imagery is a good thing. So Bing, Microsoft should be big enough to take us all doing it all at once. So you should have a tick in the box already, which is to do with Bing imagery. Further down, you've got, sorry, looking over your shoulder, you've got a section that says OpenStreetMap GPS traces. It's about the 8th down, something like that. put a tick in that box, please. Now, just as a little aside for you, GPS trace, if somebody uses a GPS or whatever and they create a trace, it can be uploaded to the OpenStreetMap site and it can be used to align everything. If you get a lot of traces, you get a fairly good idea of where something really is, and you might be able to move your imagery to line it up with the GPS traces. I will be very surprised if anybody in this room actually has a decent set of GPS traces, though, for the area that we're mapping now. They probably don't exist, but if they are there, they are the best source for making sure everything is lined up. Anybody got GPS traces? That's what I thought. Okay. Oh, might have one. Yep. Yeah. I think that's actually some OpenStreetMap data that's there. It would normally turn up as a very, very pale silvery line, little thin silvery line. Just while you've got that tab up on my screen, I've spoken about Bing. Some of the tasks use alternative imagery. They may not be in that list, but it's very easy. There's a copy and paste link off of the task manager. You just copy the URL that's there, you paste it into the custom one, and you can use that and you will then get the imagery. If you now click away from that tab, that will disappear and you should be back with your mapping screen. Now, what I'd like you to do now is to just zoom in a bit, and if you look at the bottom of your screen, the bottom of the satellite imagery screen, you've got a scale showing there. When you zoom in round about the 250 metre mark, the icons at the top of the screen will start to light up to show that you are actually able to edit at that point. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when I'm editing, I tend to be round about the 20 metre mark. Depends on my computer and the screen, etc. But I get down to about 20 metres so that I get fairly accurate when I'm mapping. What I would say to you is, it's going to be a bit difficult for me to know what everybody has got, but if you are looking at a map area, if it's dark, you're probably looking at forest, you're probably looking at something where there isn't a great deal of human interaction. Something which is light in colour is something which vehicles have passed along, there's some sort of human interaction. Generally speaking, I might be wrong, it might be a rocky outcrop, but if you zoom in first of all to anything which looks light coloured and have a look at it, you can drag the map using the left mouse button and dragging it about. You may well find that there is some existing OpenStreetMap data within your box, and if there is, what I'd encourage you to do is to click on it and just read the screen, read the tags that are already on the feature. Something like a highway will probably be tagged as highway unclassified or highway residential, might be primary, secondary, tertiary. And it may well be that it's also got a secondary tag of surface unpaved or surface dirt or something similar to that. And if you're really looking at a built-up area, it might even say surface asphalt. I don't know how we've ended up with that term, but we have, and you might get something like that. Now, when you are mapping a square, at the end of your period of mapping it, you are going to say that square is complete. Now, the problem with that is, if somebody else has started on it and left it, when you say that map is complete, what we're all assuming is that you've checked what's there. So what I would encourage you to do is, if on your square there is already some OpenStreetMap data, have a look at it, click on it, check the tags. Make sure that it's not tagged to something weird and wonderful. It's a good time to actually find out some good things about other mappers as well, because you can pick up some nice techniques. But have a good look and see what's there. Please note, if you are looking at a highway or a river or something that goes outside of your square, the way we're working on it this evening, you could be editing it and somebody 3 tables away could be editing it as well. They won't be editing it in your square, but they'll be editing it where it goes in through their square. So especially with any big feature like a highway or a river which goes into more than one square, when you edit it, I'd encourage you to upload or save it straight afterwards so that it alters on their screen as well. That way we don't end up with any anomalies or duplicates or anything. Right, how are we doing? Everyone has got a screen that they can see. Background is light enough they can see. Has anybody got a completely blank square? Look at that, everybody's got a square that's already got something or other in it. That's good.
I might have a task manager, but it's not allowing me to start.
When you're looking at features, I'm sorry this is a very confusing slide. I'll take the blame for that. What I'm trying to show you is, there we've got an area which has got a number of buildings in it. It's got a name tag on it, and somebody said it's a village. It's got a border all the way round it, and that border will be land use residential. Now, for those who can't read that, basically it makes the map look pretty when it's rendered if it's got that around it, but more importantly for the purposes of British Red Cross and MSF, they're clever people with statistics can work out the population in an area from the size of the residential area. So what you do is you make sure that that border is fairly close in to the buildings all the way round. Now the buildings, if you are looking at a table from an angle, it doesn't look as though it's square, it looks as though it's diamond shaped. Now the satellite camera is probably not directly above all of the buildings. So in your satellite imagery, it might look to you as though all of your buildings are not square. In fact, it's just the angle of the camera above them. We tend to map buildings as square. There will be exceptions. You're probably going to, at some point or other, going to come across some round huts, and they are definitely round. But generally speaking, buildings have got square corners, and that's the way that we map them. We've got a highway coming in at the bottom. It will have been highway unclassified at the bottom, and then at the first node or the first point within that residential area, it will change over to highway residential. But it is connected up. They're not two separate bits of road, they are connected up, they share a common point. And this is a path coming in, and that joins actually with that as well. Now you might say, well, nobody drives a truck down a path, but if you ever watch some of these experts with a 4x4, you'll know that they do. They drive them all over the place. If you give them a clue by saying there's a path there, but you actually join it up to other things, then the navigation software will help them to get there. And it's not only that, but there is a process later on called validating. And what a validator does is that they check to make sure that you've mapped it okay, but they might also, because they're looking at a large number of squares, they might say, yeah, all right, I agree, it looks like a path in your square, but I know, because it connects up to a number of others, that that's actually the main highway through there, and they will change the tags on it. Changing the tags only takes a few seconds, whereas me having to map out the entire path takes me a long time. So you put it in as what you see it. Don't worry about it too much, because if I come along and look at it and say, I think that's actually an unclassified highway, doesn't matter. I've just changed it because I've got an overview and I'm looking at lots of different squares. But if you come across a little village that you're looking at, this is more or less what you're aiming for. Border all the way round. It's not connected to the path or the highway. It's not connected to the buildings, but it goes all the way round them and it joins up. And excuse me, you've got all the square buildings within it, and you've got somehow you pick a route through for the road, and the roads actually join together and they join up with the paths. If you've got an agricultural area, then you may well have highway equals track. But highway equals track, in our terms in England, we tend to think of that as unsurfaced. Okay, that's terrific. Most of the places that you will be mapping, whatever you're mapping, will be unsurfaced. It doesn't work the other way. Because it's unsurfaced doesn't mean it's track. It might be the primary road. Now, I was driving in other places in Europe earlier this year, and I was driving on unsurfaced roads, and believe me, an awful lot of them were better than the roads I drive on in Kent. So don't get hung up on what the surface is. The surface doesn't tell you what the road is. A primary road goes from town to town. A secondary road, town to town, perhaps cities as well. You get down to unclassified, which might well go to the villages. But when you start talking about it looks like a track, but it goes village to village, that's not a track, that's an unclassified road. No matter how rough it looks, it's a highway unclassified. I'll leave that up there just in case it provides inspiration, but if you'd like to carry on, that would be terrific. Right, ladies and gents, before too many people disappear, can I just go over again something that we said earlier, but I just want to make sure that you know about it so that you can actually get some feedback on the mapping later on. If you can click on the tab which is for the task manager, and you're probably working on a task, if you click on stats for that particular task, you've got the little graph showing the state of play for that task. Scroll down until you find your username. I think everybody's completed a square somewhere tonight, so you should find your username there somewhere. No, okay, well, in that case, just look at somebody else's, hover the mouse over the username, and you will see in the map to the right that just their squares are highlighted there. The others fade out. And the point that I'm getting at is that when I'm validating, or one of the other validators is working on things, they will try and give you feedback. You know, the really nice feedback is, brilliant bit of mapping, thank you very much indeed. And I've said that a few times. But I might also say to you, very good, but for the next one, can you connect the paths to the roads? You know, and sometimes I take screenshots and I'll give you a link so you can look at the screenshots. But what I'd like you to do is to make sure that when you're about to sit down and you're going to do some mapping at home next time, you will just check to see if there is any sort of feedback, because there's no point in me spending time trying to give you a bit of information to improve your mapping if you're never ever going to look at it. So go back to something you've mapped, have a look at the square, click on it. If it's green, it's been validated, and you'll see mine or another validator's comments.
So you actually have to go and look for it. It doesn't.
You have to look for it. Sometimes I send a message, but I'll only send a message if, for instance, I've validated 3 or 4 of your squares, seen the same problem going the way through, and I've got time to do it. Now, there's a couple of people here that can do validating, but there's an awful lot of you that are going to be mapping now, and because there's a lot of novelty to it, you may well do an awful lot of mapping over the course of the next week, which is brilliant, but as validators, we will never keep up with you, especially as you get quicker and quicker and quicker, because I have to have I've got to check and make sure that the road's got the right tags and various other things, and although there's tools and shortcuts available to me, it does take me time, and I'm a bit of a stickler. I will spend time checking it to make sure that it's okay. So please, have a check through, check for your feedback and see it's there, and give yourself a little pat on the back for doing it, because if my feedback says something or other about, can you just do something slightly different, I'm not saying that's bad. What I'm saying is, you've just done a brilliant job. You've improved things an awful long way, but this is just one little thing that you could do just that little bit better, please. But do take it as keep mapping, because we need you. You know, you can map more in an hour between you than I can map over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm fairly quick. but there's no way that I can do the sort of mapping that you're doing. My name is Nick. I'm usually known as Tall Guy for OpenStreetMap, where I do a lot of mapping for OpenStreetMap, and in particular for the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, otherwise known as HOT. And this evening I'm doing some mapping with MSF, British Red Cross, and HOT, and it's under the terms of the Missing Maps project. The aim is to map those areas of the world which you know that there is going to be some problem where the humanitarian organisations will need to go, and try and get it mapped before the problem actually happens. We tend to wait until there's a disaster, then look at it and say, actually we've got no maps there, could we have a map please? And then we all rush around trying to map it. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to say, well look, we've got this vast continent of Africa. We know that at some point there's going to be a cholera outbreak in that area. Let's map it first so that the aid organisations can say, ah yeah, we've got a town there, we've got an approximate population of this, these are the resources that we need, this is the route that we're going to go in. Not, well we think there's a town over there but we can't find a map. OpenStreetMap is a map of the entire world. Now if you were to look at London, this area that we are now, you find it's very well mapped. It goes down to the buildings, there might be details about phone numbers, addresses. There's an awful lot of detail for London. If you look at other areas of the world, they're perhaps not so well mapped. But the OpenStreetMap project is to try and map the whole world, and the data is freely available, no copyright, so it can be used by all sorts of organisations. And when the original concept was, if the data was produced, then the software would follow it. Well, the software has started to evolve with the data now. Well, it was a long time ago, and it was quite early days in OpenStreetMap, and to be honest, it was a case of I was trying to relax after work, and to me, I enjoy sketching things, I enjoy drawing little maps, and I just started sketching a map within the OpenStreetMap as something interesting to do. But the more I got involved in it, the more I read, the more interest I found in it, and my knowledge of computing and all of the things to do with OpenStreetMap developed along with the map. So when I first started, there were very few roads actually mapped. I live in a town, and over 90% of the roads were missing when I first started. Now that town is extremely well mapped, every street, every building, every address. There's very little left for me or anybody else to map there. But I'm not sure that the need is there. I actually prefer to do a lot of my mapping for an area where there's a greater need. Some years ago, mappers within OpenStreetMap realised that in some disaster areas there were no maps available. And for instance, Haiti, when there was a tidal wave struck, some mappers started mapping the area, and within 2 days OpenStreetMap had got the best map of that area available anywhere. It became the de facto map to use. And because of that experience and the realisation that you got certain clashes between the software, various software tools evolved to make sure that if I'm mapping, what I map doesn't conflict with what the person is mapping next to me. And when I say mapping next to me, I might be sitting at my home in Kent, they might be sitting in a house in Germany, but we're mapping the same disaster area a few metres apart, and the software makes sure that we don't get clashes, there are no problems, and at the end of it, what we've done works, and it works for the people who need it. The likes of MSF and British Red Cross, they've got aid workers that are in these areas. At the moment, Ebola seems to be the main So they've got aid workers there. Through the HOT system, the data is available for download every night. So someone somewhere within MSF or Red Cross can download a map which they can put onto a Garmin, or they can download the information to put into an Android phone or whatever sort of phone it is that they've got, and then that can be used by the workers in the field. So what's being mapped this evening by people could be appearing and in use in a day's time in Africa or wherever it's needed.